I'm Wendy.
Hi, I'm Miranda.
And we're with Grit Plus Gumption Farmstead. We created a YouTube channel to just have conversations about all things surrounding trauma and healing. So we're really glad you're here. What are we going to talk about? Today, we're going to be talking about a podcast we listen to on anxiety. It's with the Adam Young podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves. It's one of our favorites that we listen to quite a bit. And we use it with clients and for ourselves. Recommend them to friends, all kinds of things. So
I literally texted out to like 5 people while I was driving. Do not recommend that, but
yes, I highly recommend that. Not while driving, obviously. But I will send people these podcasts and I'll be like, hey, this one's a really hard one. Just know, don't listen to it at work. You'll cry.
Yeah. I sent it out and I was like, to one person, I was like, this might not be for you because I've never sent you a podcast before, but I thought you would like it. Maybe not.
This one was good. It's episode, we need to figure out what episode it is. 109?
Yeah, it was 1 something.
It's in the hundreds. We'll share it. In it, he talks about causes of anxiety. And I'm one of those people that doesn't like everything is caused by this one thing. And I love how he talked about anxiety as this is what a lot of anxiety comes from. Mm-hmm. And he talked about how it's repressed feelings or feelings that you were never able to fully process, shoving down your feelings. And I feel I don't know. Do you know anything about that? I mean,
yes,
I definitely do.
I do. Especially he touched on feelings of anger, and I'm sure we'll have a whole section on women and being angry because they touched on that as well. But I just thought, man, that makes so much sense. I have anger and then I feel bad for feeling angry.
Exactly.
It was a light bulb. So
one of my friends that I made on Instagram years ago is a trauma therapist in Nashville. And she talked about how there's no such thing as negative emotions. And when she first said that years ago, I was like, what?
Mm-hmm. And they use scripture to back up the fact that there's multiple ways to view emotions, that they're not bad. It's not
right.
a bad thing, which was cool.
And the reason we shove down the emotions is because we don't have the space, a safe space to process it. We're not allowed as children to have, sometimes we grew up in families of origin where we weren't allowed to have sad feelings, how your parents are you're fine, get over it, mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess I'd never thought about it that way. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely didn't. And I just think about all the times as a kid that I don't remember, or I don't even I can't even think about the feelings that I had and wasn't allowed to process, or had to be a certain way for a certain situation or a certain person. And it just, it made so much sense for me.
And it also kind of explained where anxiety, how sometimes you're anxious and you're like, why? Mm-hmm. I'm anxious. There's nothing happening around me. I used to think it was an impending sense of doom. It sounds weird.
It feels like.
But I used to have a panic attack and then something really bad would happen right after. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I causing? Did I do that? Do I have that much power? No. Spoiler alert. I do not.
Oh my gosh.
It also talked about how maybe you haven't been able to process your grief. Mm-hmm. And that turns into anxiety, which led into a whole nother episode I ended up listening to as well. But how right now, collectively, we're going to do a whole episode on this, the mm-hmm. collective grief, collective trauma, and collective fatigue. But how you aren't able to process your loss, whether that's the loss of a person or just the loss of even a job or moving or whatever. Anytime mm-hmm. that there's a change in your life, there's grief there. Yeah, there's loss.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that, we want to move on, and he touches on this too. We want to move on. We want to feel better. We don't want to feel bad. And I was just talking to someone about this the other day before I listened, but we don't want to sit in those negative emotions either. It doesn't feel good while you're there, but sitting in those emotions and forcing yourself to stay there and not pop back up as the term goes is difficult because we want to not be there anymore.
Well, and he touched on this in the episode too, about how we're taught to not. right? Like you're not supposed to be sad. You're not supposed to be angry. You're just supposed to be happy because you have the Lord in your life. And it's like, and also there's still sadness. There's still anger. You have a right to be angry. You know, there are reasons to be angry.
There are.
You just take a look around.
There are. And I watched another good video separately from the podcast that talked about the myth of being happy. Like you're supposed to be happy all the time. We all think that, you know, we're defective if we're not happy, or if we can't will ourselves to not be sad or upset or depressed or whatever other negative emotions you don't want to feel, that there's something inherently wrong with us if we can't just be happy, which is such a crazy lie that we tell ourselves.
And I think of like the woman at church that like is always happy, like the joy of the Lord is her strength. Cool. Okay. God didn't make me that way. So, while I fully love and embrace her, I also think, what are you not grieved? Maybe you've grieved and that's why you're happy. I don't know. I don't know your life, sister, but there's something about that. Like we all look to that person as like, she needs to be our example. And it seems like it's always the woman in church that like, we need to behave like she does. She's the example of the Proverbs 31 woman.
Yeah. And I feel like the older I get, or I don't know if it has anything to do with age, but it seems the older I get, the more I realize maybe it's not happiness, but it's contentment or a sense of peace, even through like having those feelings, accepting that you have those feelings and feeling them and being able to move forward from that and not shaming yourself or guilting yourself for being the way that you are. Just I think contentment is the word that I'm going to really like. Yeah,
because it's not one or the other. It's like the middle. You're not happy, you're not sad, you're just in the middle. And the middle is like the sweet spot. It's where all the good things happen.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Brene Brown video on empathy, which I always show the beginning of like every class that we do, where she talks about using the sentence "at least." Like when something bad happens, people will be like, "Oh, at least blah 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 didn't happen." Another form of that is it could be worse.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, but it is right now. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me right now. Even if something way worse happened years ago, what is happening in my present moment is the worst thing that's happening.
Yeah. And you really can't compare trauma or situations or struggles. I mean, something may feel awful to someone who has never experienced some things that you have. And then yours is a different, but just the same amount of hurt. So I think trying to compare, which we naturally do anyways, and that's sucky, but
good word.
yeah, we naturally do it anyways, but we like should really like try to be aware not to do it. I mean, to acknowledge that we're doing it and being like, oh, okay, this is one of those things. Like I'm in a way like lying to myself, trying to make myself, you know, be to some standard that isn't, I'm imagining it. I'm making it up that I need to be this certain way when really that's not the case. So.
No. And like you say, everyone's different. So everyone's level of tolerance or everyone's level of just walking around in life is totally, totally different. You know, I mean, we both have kids. So what they think is the end of the world, like in reality, we know this is not the end of the world. You really need to get over it. But tending to them in that moment and acknowledging their feelings of, yeah, that's hard work.
It is.
Because like, you know, your block breaking is not the end of the world. Let me tell you what the end of the world is, kid. No, but like,
it is rough.
It's so hard to slow down and just tend to their needs. I mean, I guess it is for everybody though.
Yeah. And I guess that's what, I mean, the best we can do. I remember another wonderful episode of the podcast talking about it's not how many times you mess up, but how you repair. And in those moments when I feel like I'm failing in that sense and not letting them process those emotions and feel anger or sadness, or if I'm overloaded, like I can acknowledge that their emotion is spilling over, and then I can't regulate myself because I'm so like
overwhelmed.
Yes. Yeah. Stimulated or
flooded.
Yes.
That's a good word.
With whatever, because I have past emotions and stuff that I'm also feeling. So yeah, just knowing that. I totally forgot the sentence that I just said.
That like we can go back and repair.
Yes. Yep. Yes. That we can go back and repair.
I talked about that yesterday. I'm helping a woman do a trauma-informed class, and she was like, I just want to do it, right. I want to take the time to do it. And I was like, listen, that's great. You should absolutely do that. And also you should be prepared to know that you're going to mess up. You're going to make a mistake, because you can't, even the most empathetic person in the world can't predict how someone's going to react to something that you're doing. So it's not about never messing it up or getting it all right all the time, but it's about that repair of the rupture in the relationship, and how that builds more trust in the relationship than just doing everything perfectly. Because already if you're doing everything perfectly with somebody, you're unrelatable. You're unreachable almost. Also, this chair is like wobbling a lot.
I have to keep telling myself not to.
Don't move. I'm a mover and a shaker. I can't help it. Oh, trauma's funny.
Yeah, it is.
But repairing the relationship, having the opportunity to repair. So how many times you mess up with your kids, like they're not, keeping a tally or whatever, but just you're building trust by showing them that I can go back and be like, hey, I really messed up. And that's not just with your kids, it's with everybody. Yeah. Because you are going to miss someone's feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I keep thinking, I know it's kind of on a different wavelength, but also in the episode, it was talking about, relating to your kids and how he had a situation where he is anxious about the feelings his son may have. And, I really identified with that, because I'm like, okay, my child's about to be 8, and I regularly am worried about her emotional state. Is she feeling loved? Is she feeling like she can trust me to talk to me? Is she just all of these things that I'm worried about. And then when he said, I feel like it's because I had those feelings when I was an 8-year-old child, and to think about all the things that I was going through when I was 8 years old. And, my parents got divorced around that time, and I probably wasn't allowed, not as if it were a spoken rule at home, but I probably wasn't allowed to feel those feelings because I had to be the big sister. I had to take care of my siblings. I had to be emotionally strong for my parents, and just me seeing her and seeing myself in her in those emotions and wanting to protect her from that is just, that's another hard thing as a parent, seeing yourself.
That was a great part that he talked about there, because it's like, I never really thought about how you're seeing in your kids something that you think they're missing, but it's not that they're missing it, it's that you were missing it.
Yeah.
Well, and in some ways still are missing it. Do you feel like you can put your emotions, your anxiety on your kids?
Do I feel like I could, or that I do?
Both.
Yes, I do. Often. My husband is very good about pointing out when I do that too. If there's situations that happen and he likes to use the phrase that I am worried about something that is literally not in the present, that I need to look around and be like, is this actively happening right now? Do I need to be as worried as I am, in tears, or having a full crying meltdown about this situation that's not actually happening?
Right.
And I'm glad that he calls me out on it, but also I'm pissed off when he calls me out on it.
Of course. Let's just name that. That's annoying.
Yes. He's right, but also
why is he have to be right?
Yes. And so yeah, definitely, if I'm feeling those feelings and I'm putting it on her, am I causing her to feel that when maybe she has no reason to feel that? I don't know.
My daughter was in a mixed martial arts class last summer, And the things that I'm feeling in that class, obviously I have PTSD. So like, I'm feeling triggered, I'm feeling accelerated, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And like some of the things that he would say, eventually we took her out of that class because I was like, I don't like the way he talks to kids. But I was like, when he says this, how does that make you feel? And her response was like, whatever. Like it wasn't about, like she knew it wasn't about her. I was like, I want to be like her when I grow up. Because I immediately take all of that personally, but she doesn't, because she hasn't had to deal with that her entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. They're seeing with a different lens than we are. We have, I mean, in my case, 30 plus years we're working with of experience and trauma and struggle and situations, and they don't even have a percentage of that yet. I mean, so
no, like they see with their normal eyes.
Yes.
We see with trauma eyes, the trauma lenses.
Yes.
They also brought up, and I can't remember if it was in this podcast episode or another one, but the difference between fear and anxiety.
It was this one.
It was this one. Okay. Where he was like, fear is something happening in the present. Anxiety is you're fearful or worried about something that hasn't happened yet, or maybe happened in the past,
but it's not a present active danger.
Exactly. High five. We said that together. Yes. Yeah. That wasn't even planned. So the natural fear, if I walk out into this 112-degree weather and we're out in the country, I'm going to come across a snake. Right.
That's right. It's a rational fear.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it happening right now? No. Am I having anxiety that there could be a snake? Sure. But there's also that survival sense in our brain of like, we need to look out for danger. So I'm scanning, right? But it's not happening right now, but it's a protective thing. So
that would be, we would consider that anxiety. Yes.
I think we consider that fear and like survival.
Yeah.
Now, if I don't go outside because I am worried about seeing a snake, absolutely. That I think we could call anxiety.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So yeah, the not in the present and then fully in the present, and as a way of surviving. Like our brains are wired to like, we haven't always, lived in a safe environment. We had to watch out for, things like animals and like where we're going to eat and things like that, caveman days or whatever. But our brains are still that same brain, still wired for survival. But now there's so many more things to be worried about. And if you don't worry about anything, kudos to you. But I think we're all living in a really high stress, high anxiety.
I think so too.
Time right now.
And there are so many ways we take in information anyways. I think about my mom, who will probably hate me if she sees this, but she watches ID channel quite a lot. Like,
is it the like murder shows and stuff?
It is. And I also love a good crime show.
Oh, like yeah.
Forensic Files. I love it.
Or Snapped.
Yes.
I can always tell you which ways they messed up.
So good. But also, like, she cannot go somewhere and like pull into a parking lot and sit with the door unlocked. Like, she has to lock the door because there's that like anxiety, like
I have that too.
That these things happen all the time. Like, and granted, sometimes they do, but also do you do that?
I do that. Yes. Oh. My husband will constantly leave the door unlocked at our house, which we live out in the country, so like he thinks it should be fine because he grew up in a very small town in North Dakota. But he will also leave his car door unlocked.
My car key is in the car right now.
There's something wrong with y'all. I'm just saying. But
I guess that's
here, sure. Like, we're out in the middle of nowhere right now. But if the house door unlocked, car doors, I used to hate that when you put your car in park, it would unlock. My car doesn't do that now, but like until you turn off the car and then it unlocks.
I didn't know. I don't know if I've ever had a car.
But I would relock it. And I'd feel bad if people walk past my car and they hear me relocking it because that's right. I'm going to stay on the other side of the store. Anxiety about how other people are feeling about me. There's so many of those.
There's so many different things. But yeah, I definitely like think about in the future the more you take in, the more things you see, the scary stories, the things on social media, even if we think about the mass trauma from the school shootings that have happened and stuff like that, there's always going to be this like anxiety building the more we take in and don't process through it. We're just consuming and gaining all these new fears and anxiety, I feel like. And
right.
It's a lot.
But the other option is to be completely ignorant of that. And that's not a solution either. But like you said, processing it, like whatever you consume, process, kind of like food. You don't just shove your whole day's worth of food into your body. You eat a little bit at a time, your body processes, you get hungry, you eat a little bit more. So the processing of that is crucial.
Yeah, I agree.
Great conversation.
Yeah.
Yay. So we're going to be doing more of these. We're going to be talking about podcasts that we listen to and just having conversations about them. We're going to also have certain topics that we're going to be talking about, but we're really glad you're here. If you have questions too, send us questions.
Yeah,
we love
leave
questions.
A comment. You can follow us on social media at Grit Plus Gumption on Instagram. We also have a TikTok, Grit Plus Gumption. So you can find us there too.
And you can visit our website, gritplusgumption.org, if you want to learn more about what we do. So please subscribe, like, share this with your friends, and we'll see you guys next time.